start by telling us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm super fortunate. I have the Brainerd Lakes area. I know every legislator thinks they got the best district in the state, but I think that I could certainly make the case for my own district. It's District 6B, and Brainerd, Nisswa, Pequot is generally the region, and it's a really neat, diverse community with lots of different opportunities for folks to come into the area and to recreate, and lots of cabins there, lots of people that have moved into the district, quite honestly, over the course of the last year. So I'm just meeting people now. Kind of interesting, even though I've served 5 terms, this is my 5th term, 9 years. There's still, of course, folks that you may not have reached or talked to yet. But
Middle of the 5th term in your house, did you think you'd be here almost a decade?
You know, you often question, what am I going to do this next term when that comes around, or this next election cycle? And I have always felt like there's so much that I still would like to do. I don't know that I expected it to take this long, but that's okay. We just keep plugging away, and I think that those opportunities will come.
You mentioned 6B. When you talk to those people in your district, what sort of things are they interested in, and what would they like to see addressed?
I think a snapshot right now of how people are feeling. There's still a lot of questions. What happened this last session? And I think there was expectations based on, of course, all of the conversations that were happening in media and in advertisement, this candidate, that candidate, statewide. And then, well, what did actually get done and what didn't get done? And so some of those things are more easy to talk about. Some of them are a little bit more frustrating. I think there's still a lot of folks wondering and scratching their head going, what are we doing exactly? The surplus, I thought we were going to see maybe a $2,000 check. And of course, that amount is greatly reduced. And so they wonder, what's going on there? If we have a surplus, why did taxes go up? Why am I paying more? I just went to get a car the other day and I see I'm paying more for my car, or whatever the case may be. So we're working through that as best we can. I even had an event last night talking to constituents in my community. And I wish I could say that there was reasonably satisfied folks, but mostly it was pretty grouchy. So you try to work through that and address those questions as they wonder, what kind of went wrong this last session. At least that's the way they're characterizing it to me. And hopefully we can have those conversations in this coming year.
Your district, technically Greater Minnesota, right?
Very much so.
Okay. Is there a divide, do you think, between metro area and rural parts of the state when it comes to legislation that makes it to the governor's desk?
I think there certainly was in this last year. And I think the proof of that is, even in my own committee subject area where I spend most of my time, environment, natural resources, there were virtually no, and I think I can count them all on one hand, the times there was bipartisan legislation being heard. In other words, Republicans having an opportunity to present a bill in the Environment Committee. It was just a handful of times that happened. And I know that there's folks that think that they may have a mandate to push X, in terms of their priorities, and that's fine. But when it's done in the way that it was done this last session, I think that Greater Minnesota was certainly left out, and a lot of questions as to why, what was the issue there, and why is it that one part of the state might have more attention in this last cycle than those that might live in another part of the state. So, maybe even some folks that feel like the idea of, that was being pushed by our governor, that we'd have one Minnesota and the approach, statutorily in the next cycle, that would have been this last year, wasn't fulfilled, that promise wasn't kept. There certainly is a lot of frustration right now, and we're trying to make sure that we're informing constituents as best we can and giving them the tools they need to try to be successful in their businesses and in whatever might be going on in their private life, even though some of these new laws are affecting them very negatively.
And you're the Republican lead for the Environment and Natural Resources
That's right,
Committee.
right.
What would you like to see the committee focus on in 2024?
Transparency and accountability. I would like to see the committee make sure that the over $600 million that was spent in addition to base spending in the Environment and Natural Resources subject is going where it was promised, or where it was having the effect that we were told it would have. And there's some real simple examples, and I've seen a greater focus on PFAS, for example, perifluoral alkali substances. We're spending almost $100 million in climate research, another discussion that has been ongoing here at the Capitol, and water infrastructure grants. How is all of that coming together? Are we seeing the results? Are we seeing the impacts that we'd like to see when those kinds of dollars are being spent? I mentioned the PFAS stuff. There's so many new rules for industry and for private citizens and folks that may not even knew they were affected. These new rules are certainly going to have an impact, and I'd like to make sure that we're seeing the downstream effect that was promised beginning to form. And if it's not, why not? We need to understand that better.
And this upcoming year is going to be a bonding year as well, even though some bonding was passed last year. What do you think makes sense in terms of a bonding bill this year?
I just saw that we have an over, maybe, I think, if I recall correctly, $2.5 billion surplus, developing a surplus again, right? So when I also heard in the same story that Senator Dietzich, the leader in the Senate, was interested in maybe seeing some of that surplus go towards what would otherwise have been bonding, I thought that was a real fiscally responsible comment to make. And I would hope to see that if we're going to do something with the surplus this coming session, I would hope that we would consider being fiscally responsible and maybe borrowing less money, or maybe borrowing no money at all. And if that's a real possibility, I would be super excited to see that come out of the current majority. Speaking from the minority, it would have been great, for us to have seen more significant tax cuts and dollars going back to those folks that were overtaxed. Now, we didn't see that this last session, but fingers crossed. I can hope that maybe that conversation changes in an election year, but maybe not. We'll see.
So outside of environment or bonding, is there anything else or any other issues that you'd like to see addressed this year?
Well, I did mention earlier a number of the bills that weren't heard in the Environment Committee. Republicans had offered, and there were some that I was hoping to see come to the committee, some that I even carried. And we've had a long conversation about CWD and the impact of that across the state. And the legislation that passed was very aggressive in working towards regulating the industry, the deer farming industry. I would like to see some legislation, and this is a bill that I proposed, that would help transition farms out of, say, deer farming and into something else. And for those that might not know, if you don't have a CWD positive animal in your herd, you don't qualify for an indemnity. So there's no option, to have your herd bought out. I think that would make more sense. Rather than regulating deer farms out of existence, give those folks an opportunity to, before they have a CWD positive animal, transition out of the deer farming business. And then that would work towards, I think, resolving that issue more softly rather than the heavy-handed approach that was heard this last session. Some of my other members, Representative Keel, she had some great proposals on looking on how do we reduce phosphorus in egg communities rather than some of them, again, more heavy-handed bills that we heard this last session. And I've got a whole stack of them right here, the Environment Committee, right? So there was a huge number of bills that were heard that didn't include some of those provisions that could have maybe softened the blow when it came to regulating industry as opposed to working with our friends in agriculture to work towards our goals when it comes to environment and our natural resources, very abundant natural resources in Minnesota.
And just finally, I have to ask you this before I leave. How does one juggle being a member of the House of Representatives and have 6 kids? I have 4 kids, so I don't know how you do it.
Well, it's not easy, and my wife Carrie and I have had to make a few adjustments, as you can imagine. And one of the things that we do that's very different than the average member, there's a few that stay together as they move from their home, wherever they may represent, to St. Paul. So she comes with me, my wife and kids, and we homeschool, so that works. The kids can come with us, and a few of our children are graduated now and thankfully doing very well and able to take care of their own situations. But with our kids that are still school age, it's great. They're here with us, and at the end of a legislative day, I can come home and hear, "Hey, Dad," as opposed to sitting in a hotel room or an apartment all by myself. It's super nice to have my family with me, and then we're back home after that and there for the weekend.
Well, Representative Heintzeman, that's great, and thanks for being with us.
Hey, glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.